Welcome to our channel. In this video, we will discuss a remarkable statement by Slovak Foreign Minister Juraj Planar, who accused the European Union of double standards in its dealings with Ukraine and the Gaza Strip. According to Planar, the EU has imposed numerous sanctions on Russia while dealing differently with other issues, undermining the bloc's credibility internationally. The minister emphasized that Slovakia opposes any violation of international law, and that countries must prevent violations and respect each other. He also emphasized that dialogue is the only way to resolve conflicts and stop wars, not sanctions or loud statements alone. In a related context, Planar noted that the Slovak government pursues a sovereign and peaceful policy toward all, and that Prime Minister Robert Fico is representing the country in China today to participate in commemorating the victims of World War II and hold talks with leaders of other countries. What does this stance mean for the future of EU policy? Could such an accusation shift alliances or force a revision of policy? What's said behind closed doors in Brussels usually doesn't make it to the media, but occasionally, the truth slips through the lips of a senior diplomat. Recently, a European foreign minister didn't hesitate to describe EU policy as suffering from a blatant, double standard. At the PLED 2025 Strategy Forum, Slovak Foreign Minister Juraj Planar criticized the international silence on the situation in Gaza, compared to the response to Ukraine, saying it revealed a collapse in the fair application of international humanitarian law. How could Europe, which rallied so quickly in support of Ukraine, suddenly appear divided and hesitant in the face of a horrific humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza? In this video, we are not expressing opinions, but rather presenting facts and evidence that expose this duplicity that threatens the credibility of the entire European continent. When the war broke out in Ukraine, Europe acted as one, with a strength and resolve that few had anticipated. There were virtually no divisions, but rather a near unanimous consensus that what had happened was an unjustified aggression that must be confronted in every possible way. The 27 member states of the European Union stood united, not just in words and condemnations, but with practical action on the ground. Let's start with the massive financial and military support. Europe has opened its coffers to Ukraine. By mid-2025, total European aid to Ukraine exceeded €90 billion, with significant amounts allocated to weapons and military supplies. The EU also committed to delivering 1 million artillery shells to Kyiv by the end of 2024 and training at least 80,000 Ukrainian soldiers on its territory. This wasn't just support. European officials viewed it as an investment in Europe's own security. Then came the severe sanctions on Russia, successive packages described as the harshest in modern history. They covered virtually everything: energy, banking, trade, in addition to freezing the assets of thousands of Russian individuals and companies. The goal was clear: to strangle the Russian war machine. On the humanitarian front, European countries opened their borders to millions of Ukrainian refugees, granting them protection and broad rights, from housing and work to education. The response was swift and warm, to the point that some Western commentators described Ukrainian refugees as like us. All this was accompanied by a unified political and media discourse. European leaders and major media outlets adopted a single narrative, condemning Russian aggression and portraying Ukraine as a bastion of freedom and democracy. It even went so far as to grant Ukraine the status of a candidate country for EU membership, a hugely symbolic step. In short, Europe demonstrated rare unity and sent a message to the world: we are with Ukraine until the end. But as soon as we turn to the European position on the war on Gaza, that image of unity and strength evaporates, replaced by an image of confusion, division, and political paralysis. The continent, which moved with lightning speed to support Ukraine, seems unable to adopt a unified stance on a human massacre occurring just steps away from its shores. Here, the statements of Slovakia's foreign minister, Juraj Planar, sound like a true testament to the family. He said it bluntly: the European Union's approach to what is happening in Ukraine and the Gaza Strip is an application of double standards, and for this reason, we Europeans are losing our international credibility. In contrast to the consensus on the Ukraine issue, the European Union was divided on Gaza from the outset. Countries like Germany and Austria were quick to affirm Israel's right to self-defense, and rejected any calls for a ceasefire, while others, like Spain, Ireland, and Belgium, called for the protection of civilians and an end to the violence. This division paralyzed the EU's ability to take any meaningful action. Let's see the comparison in numbers. While sweeping sanctions have been imposed on Russia, not a single serious punitive measure has been taken against Israel. On the contrary, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions BDS movement, which advocates for similar peaceful measures, is regularly demonized and labeled anti-Semitic in several European countries. And what about aid? The disparity is mind-boggling. While Ukraine received over €90 billion in European aid, the EU only increased its support for Gaza by €25 million at the start of the crisis, bringing the total to approximately €100 million for that year. Even the rhetoric was contradictory. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described Russia's cutting off of water and electricity to Ukraine as pure terrorism. But when Israel imposed a comprehensive blockade on Gaza and cut off the same essential resources, there was an eerie silence, or mutterings about Israel's right to self-defense. This prompted the UN Secretary General himself to urge EU leaders to avoid double standards. This duality has not gone unchallenged within Europe. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez warned that this stance endangers Europe's international standing. So, why this double standard? Why does the life of a civilian in Ukraine seem more valuable than the life of a civilian in Gaza in European political calculations? The answer is not simple. It is a complex web of interests, history, and pressures. First, American influence. It's difficult to understand the European position without looking to Washington. Europe, particularly in its confrontation with Russia, finds itself forced to shelter under the American umbrella. This diminishes its decision-making independence and makes it almost impossible for Brussels to take a position that radically contradicts that of its most important ally, which provides unconditional support to Israel. Second, strategic interests. Europe uses the human rights card selectively. It criticizes violations in countries it opposes, but remains silent when violations occur in countries it needs, whether for energy supplies from the Middle East or as a key technological and military partner, such as Israel. Third, historical legacy and guilt. The memory of the Holocaust still casts a heavy shadow over European politics, especially in Germany. Fear of being accused of anti-Semitism makes any serious criticism of Israeli policies a red line, often leading to political paralysis that prevents a firm stance. Fourth, the rise of the far right in Europe. These movements, which are gaining popularity, adopt a nearly unified position in supporting Israel politically and militarily, and prefer strong relations with the United States at the expense of European decision-making independence, thus undermining any attempt to adopt a balanced foreign policy. Finally, the legal and political framework. The West views the conflict in Ukraine as a clear invasion of a sovereign state, making the application of international law straightforward and easy. The conflict in Gaza, on the other hand, is often framed within the war on terror, a complex framework that gives Israel more room to maneuver and makes it harder to condemn it with the same force. These factors combined create what the Slovak minister described as a breakdown of justice, a system in which principles become flexible, the law is selective, and morality is subordinated to interests. This discrepancy between the positions on Ukraine and Gaza is not merely a passing observation. It is a blatant revelation of the double standards that plague European foreign policy. This double standard, acknowledged by senior European officials, carries a very high price. First, the collapse of moral credibility. How can Europe present itself as a beacon of human rights and international law while applying these principles according to the identity of the victim and the perpetrator? This creates a historical rupture between the West and the rest of the world, especially in the Arab and Islamic worlds, where Europe is perceived as having lost its moral compass. Second, it undermines the entire international order. When international law is ignored anywhere, it weakens it everywhere. Silence over what is happening in Gaza sends a dangerous message that power, not law, rules, opening the door to more chaos and war. Third, the erosion of European influence. In today's multipolar world, Europe is no longer the sole player. By losing the trust of the countries of the global south, it risks becoming a mere follower, not a leader, on the international stage. Critical voices from within Europe, such as those from Slovakia's foreign minister and Spain's prime minister, are a ray of hope, evidence that someone sees the danger. But the question is, will the EU institutions listen to these voices before it's too late? In an unforgivingly changing world, the price of losing your moral compass can be very high. Now, we want to know your opinion. Do you agree with Planar's description of double standards? Or are there justifiable reasons for the differences in dealing with issues like Ukraine and Gaza? What is the future of European foreign policy? Can it regain its credibility? Write your opinions in the comments, and we'll engage in honest discussions. If you enjoyed the video, please like and share it to highlight this duplicity and support European voices calling for justice and consistency in the application of international law. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all new content as soon as it is published. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.